Hey there! I'm Riskable, and in this video I'm going to be covering Career Bees. Hey Mr. Creeper, when was the last time you paid your taxes? What is Career Bees? It's an add-on to the forestry mod. It's a mod of its own. And when you're developing a new mod for Minecraft, you have to ask yourself one question. To be or not to be? And R.W. Tima decided to be. And this is his mod. It is amazing. The level of detail that he put into it is quite impressive, considering that I'm using version 0.2.0. And it works wonderfully. And look at all these bees. I've created a wall of bees here, and I'm going to cover all of them. They are in the order in which they appear in JEI. Just type Career Queen. We should see them all, and I put them in the order in which they appear here. And I've also created a little color code to keep things simple. The student bee is green because it's the starting bee. Normal bees that just do something are white, and the bees that mostly act as breeding pairs that don't really do much are highlighted in light blue. So let's continue down here a little bit, and you'll notice that down here I've got the bee gun, the BB gun I should say. Any bee that's got the BB gun underneath it like that means that it works with the gun. Bees that don't have that won't work with the gun, they don't do anything. Alright, let's go down here and have a look at some of the other colors. The honey smelter bee I've highlighted in yellow because it's a little bit special, a little bit different, and it needs its own little section here. The yente bee is like that as well. It's its own little thing. And the doctor bee, and there's another bee highlighted in red, which we'll get to in a second, it is also special as well. So even though it works in the bee gun, I've highlighted it in red because it only works on other players. It's not going to work on anything else. So having it in your bee gun might not be all that useful unless you're trying to heal other folks, or in the case of the plague bee, remove any negative effects that are applied. And that pretty much covers my little color coding scheme here. Let's start out with the student bee and how to get it. And if you're not familiar with bees, the way it works is you make yourself an apiary, which is a forestry block. You add say like a common bee and a cultivated bee, and you get a student bee. 100% of the time, it says there, but that's actually not true. You won't get this, but let me go over that in a second. But that's how bee breeding works in forestry, and I'll get into the gendistry way in a minute. Is over there, my little gendistry setup. The key to getting started with career bees is actually to breed a common bee and a cultivated bee, which are both very, very easy to get if you're familiar with the forestry bees and how that works. But the trick is you need to put the apiary over a bookshelf. So look at a bookshelf. And you just do something like this. And then there's a chance, 100% chance, if you put these two bees in there, that eventually you'll get a student bee. And the student bee is the base bee of career bees. So if we look at any given bee, like the collecting queen, I'm in cheat mode here, the recipe, you'll see that it uses a student as one of the breeding pairs that you'll need to get. And then everything works out from there. So student, and then you get graduates, and you get various bees. But they all start from there. You need to start with the student queen. And that's how you get started with career bees. So we've gone over how to get started and how to get your first career bee, but what can you actually do with them? Well, one of the first things you can do with the very first bee is use a student drone, and if you shift right-click on an apiary, it will watch the hive and alert you when the queen is gone, right? So right now there's no queen, and it's not just when the queen is gone, it's actually whenever there's a problem or the queen can't work. So if you right-click on this apiary, you can see there's no queen here, so let's grab a queen of some sort, throw it in there, and the effect should go away. There we go. Well, as soon as it finds the flower, there we go. So now this apiary is working. It's going to produce some honey eventually, honeycombs. And that's one of the nice features of the student drone. Now there's another type of bee that does something similar, and that's the yente bee. And I know I said I was going to cover them in order, but the yente bee, since we're on this topic, if you shift right-click with a yente on a apiary, you can see down below it says the yente will watch this hive and find husbands for the young princesses. So basically what the yente bee does, and just the princess, and note that for the student you need to use drones to get that effect, but for the yente you need to use a princess. But I don't think it needs to be a pristine stock. Ignoble stock will work just fine. I don't know if it lasts forever, but it probably does. I guess we'll have to find that out. The Yente Bee, basically when this is done, you'll have a princess here and then some drones. And what the Yente Bee does is it picks the best drone that's there and automatically mates it with the princess to create a new queen. And in that sense, it fully automates your apiaries, which is nice. And I want to point something out too. If we use a hopper, so let's say we have a chest here, doesn't matter what kind of chest, and the princess and the drones pop out here. What's really nice about the Yente Bee is it happens really fast. It happens the very second that queen dies and it leaves a princess and some drones behind. So even though I've got a hopper over this apiary, and in theory the princess and the drones would end up here in this ender chest, they actually won't. Or I should say, the queen will be made and placed up here at the top and keep the apiary working before anything else gets dropped out of the apiary and into the nearby chest via that hopper, which is really sweet. It's a really nice way to fully automate apiaries without any power. Now let's talk about the next bee in our series, the collecting bee. The collecting bee does exactly what you'd think it does. It collects things around the hive. And I've set one up right here. A collecting queen is here, and let's throw some stuff on the ground and see what happens. And as you can see, it picked up that gunpowder that I threw on the ground, and that's precisely how it works. And if you're familiar with Botania's Hopper Hawk, it works in a very similar fashion if you only want it to pick up certain items, like gunpowder. We can do that. So we'll throw that gunpowder down, it should get picked up, and if I throw down this grass block, it should not get picked up. Let's see. There you go. So it left the grass block on the ground because I had gunpowder in an item frame. And that's basically how it works. And if you want it to pick up faster, just add some frames here, such as the magic frame. And I'll demonstrate that. Now let's see how fast it picks up this gunpowder. Oh, look at that. Much faster. And just about all the bees in career bees work like this. They are standard forestry bees at their base, so they do pick things up and produce faster if you give them item frames. Now before I continue on and talk about the graduate bee, the PhD bee, and a little bit about the student bee again, let's talk about the flower pedestal. It's a special block that you can create with career bees that has a few specific purposes in that it holds things. You can also get things out of it with a hopper if you place it over a hopper. And the reason why I talk about this is the recipe, very simple, sticks and a flower. The reason why I talk about that is because the graduate bee, the PhD bee, and the student bee all have a special ability that doesn't happen. You're not going to need it very often, but when you do, it's probably going to be very, very handy. And that is if you take a career bee, like the artistic queen, let's pretend that this bee has lost its ability, its special ability through the breeding process. You've bred it 1,000 times, and because of genetic decay, it's lost its special ability. What you can do is place a student bee or a PhD bee or a graduate bee in a nearby apiary and put the bee in question in the flower pedestal. The PhD, student, or graduate bees will gradually, or I should say eventually, restore your bee's special ability, and this effect is called retraining. Moving on, let's talk about the artistic bee. The artistic bee is interesting. It basically places paintings on nearby blocks. Pretty straightforward. It also works in the bee gun, which is interesting in itself. So I had an artistic queen running over here for a little while earlier. It doesn't work particularly fast, but as you can see, this is its effect. Now let's see what happens when I use it in the BB gun. Let's try it. There we go. Now it does take a very long time for the bee gun version of this to work, but I guess you can't rush art. Now let's talk about the armorer bee. What the armorer bee does is it adds additional armor to whatever armor you place in a nearby flower pedestal. So you can see I've got the Armorer Queen here running in this apiary. Let's have a look at this armor that I've recently placed in here. Look at that, it's got plus 49% armor. So if I left this in here long enough, the Armorer Queen would eventually make it 100% armor, so the effective armor on here would be 18. Believe it or not, because it's double the value 9 that you can see there. Pretty impressive and just a little bit overpowered. Up next is the Police Bee. This is one of my favorite bees. Let's see what happens when we put it in the nearby apiary. Let's get rid of the Armorer Queen there. Let's put the Police Queen in, and let's spawn a creeper, or a 3. And as you can see, the Police Bee is going to attack these nearby creepers, and eventually it will kill them. Let's give it a little bit of a hand. There we go. And you see, it didn't have any drops there. That's because the Police Bee collects the drops of the things that it kills. Look at that, we've got some gunpowder here. And it also makes these hilarious police incident reports. On day 19 at 04423 in the overworld dimension, an incident occurred in which a subject identified as Creeper was caught trespassing in a restricted area. Subject was duly cautioned and then stung to death. Confiscated items, 2 gunpowder. Signed, Officer Millicent. I love it. But you do note that if you want to automate this, you're going to have to find some way to get rid of these police incident reports. And just as an FYI, if you toss these on the ground, they disappear nearly instantly. So if you just set up a collecting bee nearby, plug these into a Botania open crate or a dropper, have them spit out in the world, they'll disappear, and then you can have that collecting bee pick up the remains, and that should take care of it. Also note that the Police Bee is one of the most effective bees to put in the BB gun. So as you can see, I've got a Police Bee here. Let's spawn another creeper. We'll do it away from that hive there so that you can see that it works independently. And here we go. So the Police Bees that I sent out are now attacking this creeper, and it killed it. So you can see it's a pretty effective means of killing mobs. It does take a second, but it does work, and you can actually just kind of spam this thing by right-clicking. And that'll take care of all of them. You don't really have to worry about it. You just sort of be patient. It even works. A single, swarm of Police Bees will kill an Enderman. So that's pretty sweet. Up next is the Sharpening Bee, another bee that works in the bee gun, though why you'd want to use it in the bee gun, I have no idea. Same goes for the Armorer Bee. So I've gone ahead and placed a Sharpening Queen here in this apiary, and I've had this diamond sword sitting in this flower pedestal for a while. Let's have a look and see what it's done. Look at that, plus 5 attack damage added to the 7 that the diamond sword already has, which is quite impressive. Again, a little bit overpowered, but remember, to get to this point requires a lot of tedious bee breeding work, so it's not too bad. Now let's have a look at another one of my favorite bees, the Lumber Bee. The Lumber Bee, let's get it out, is one of my favorites because it basically farms nearby trees without actually having to cut them down. It's actually pretty sweet. Let's try it here. We'll put it in this apiary, and I'm also going to put it in the bee gun to demonstrate that it works in the bee gun. I don't need the Artistic Queen anymore. All right, now let's see what happens when I fire a bunch of Lumber Bees at this tree. Now, like the Artistic Bee, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but watch what happens once these bees are done doing their thing. Look at that. Look at all that bark, because that's what that is. Tree bark. They're basically bark biters. So the way this tree bark, the way you use it is you just put it in a crafting grid, and you get wood, basically. And what's really nice about this is it doesn't actually chop the tree down. It just sort of produces wood from thin air. And what's even nicer about this is you can fully automate this process by, oops, I want to take that down. So let's just give you an example. Let's do the crafter, the mechanical crafter. Let me do. So something like the mechanical crafter from Extra Utilities. Put this down here, and we'll take the hopper and we'll put it in here. Now we'll take some of our bark and we'll put it here. And now we just be patient, and eventually this lumber queen will extract wood from nearby trees. This one should be close enough, I think. Not entirely certain, but maybe not. And as it does so, the autocrafter will make wood. So you can use this to make, charcoal for yourself, or just collect massive amounts of wood. And you can this is actually quite an easy bee to breed. It's just a graduate and a forest bee. So you can actually have a whole bunch of these in an area, and it will collect bark. One thing I do recommend, though, is only have one type of tree nearby. Otherwise, you'll get mixtures of bark, and then it will be difficult to autocraft them. Here's a pretty straightforward bee, the Husbandry Bee. It's one of those bees that works with the BB gun, and it's kind of fun to use it that way. But let's start with a simple demonstration here. Let's just put it in an apiary. And in a moment, we should get some breeding going on here. I don't know why I can't see the flowers. There we go. Aha! So now we've got a new pig, and that's basically what it does. Just be very careful with things like this, because if you don't have something nearby to kill off offspring, eventually you'll run out of control and probably crash your server. Let's have a little demonstration of it in the BB gun here. I think I saw some cows over here. Ah, here we go. So let's make sure that it's selected. Yep, it's selected, the Husbandry Queen, and we'll just do one of these. Ah, love. Love is in the air. Haha. Now's a good time to cover the Butcher Bee. It's the pair that goes along with the Husbandry Bee, so that's why I'm covering it now. Let's talk about how it works. Well, if you've got some animals that you're breeding nearby, or things you want to butcher, just put the Butcher Queen in a nearby apiary, and it will butcher nearby animals, always leaving at least 2 behind, so you have a breeding pair. It also works in the BB gun. Let's make sure I have it selected. Yep, got the Butcher Queen selected. And this is how it works. There goes our last 2 females. You know what? Let's fix something. Like this chisel that needs to be repaired, using the Repair Bee. And while we wait for it to do its thing, because it's not very particularly fast bee, we'll also talk about how to use the Smelter Bee effectively, and way down here, the Ore Crusher Bee effectively. So to get started, I'm going to place this chisel that needs to be repaired in this flower pedestal, and put the Repair Bee in a nearby apiary. And, very slowly over time, we'll see that particle effect, it will very, very slowly repair this chisel. So we'll just leave that there and let it do its thing. And then we're going to talk about the Smelter Queen. Now, the Smelter Queen does pretty much exactly what you think it does. Let's get some ore. It smelts ore. So let's put the ore here in this hopper, and you can see that it should feed right into this flower pedestal. And it's going to smelt it, and it will, you get iron ingot. But what fun is that, right? We want to not just smelt our ore, let's double it like like every mod has these days, ore doubling. But you know what's cool about this is that we can actually have the Ore Crusher Queen, which also does probably exactly what you think it does, is it crushes ore into multiple dusts. It actually can get 3 times 3 dusts, so it can actually triple your ore. But the end result isn't, totally tripled ore. So you get a mixture of like doubled and tripled ore, so it's not a perfect tripling every time. But if you think about this setup I've got here, there might be a little bit of a problem. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to get some more ore. So we've got this Ore Crusher Queen here, so it should be crushing the ore into dust, which then gets smelted by the Smelter Bee, right? So let's try that. But we might have a little bit of a problem here. The Smelter Bee is probably just going to smelt this ore as well as this one. So how do we tell the Smelter Bee to only smelt on this flower pedestal, and the Ore Crusher Bee to only smelt on this pedestal? And the answer is pheromones. So you can see I've got 2 vials of pheromones here set up already. The Ore Crusher pheromone and the Smelter pheromone. And the way you get them is with a pheromone frame. And let me show you the recipe for that. It's just an untreated frame and paper, very, very simple. And you throw it in an apiary like so. And after a while, you'll get some pheromones. It's not very long, just put it in there, go do something else, and come back, and you should have some pheromones. And I just noticed that this apiary doesn't have any frames in it. So let's speed that up. We'll get an extra for when we take that out. What is about this one? Ah, it also does not have any frames in it. Alright, so that should speed up our little example here. So we've got this problem here, so let's go ahead and take this ore out of here. And we'll take the smelted stuff out of here. Well, we can put that there. We can leave that alone. Now, let me show you how to use these pheromones. So we want the ore crusher bee to only crush ores up here. Or I should say, we want to make this flower pedestal exclusive to the ore crusher bee. So I'm just going to right-click on there with that pheromone. And now the smelter bee should no longer use this pedestal. And we can test that by putting some ore in here. And now we should not have any smelting going on this pedestal. Yeah, see, we got the dust, and now that dust is being smelted into iron ingots. Now, I'm gonna, just to be safe, and this is an alternate, you can pick one or the other, right? You don't really need both, but just to be safe, I'm gonna put the smelter pheromone here as well. So this basically turns this pedestal and these pedestals into basically an exclusive ore processing setup. And I did test this earlier, and I had about 2 and a little bit more. There's like, I think it was like 40 something ingots here, based on 64 iron ore. So that was a little bit more than double. It was like 2.5 times the ore that I got, which is really sweet, right? That's really great, considering there was no power involved. You just need to be patient. And as you can see, I've got some pheromones here, and that were generated by the pheromone frame. Now, if we put a magic frame back in there, things should move a little bit faster. I'm sure you can see that in the background, because the frames do speed things up. And that's how this is an effective way of using the smelting and ore doubling capabilities of career bees. Now let's have a look at our chisel. Look at that, it's starting to get repaired, but you can see that it didn't really fully repair it, it just added a little bit. And that's because the even with 3 frames in here, the repair queen is not the fastest thing in the world. So let's try something else. Let's throw it on the ground. And we're going to make sure we have a repair queen in here. Excellent. I didn't think I did, but apparently I do. And we're going to use that to just shoot it right at this chisel here. And it should repair the chisel. Now, it's just like before. It only repairs a tiny amount with every one of these bees that we shoot at it. But the bee gun, you know, it uses honey. I wasn't aiming very properly. And by the way, you do have to be careful when you're shooting at entities like this. It's pretty easy to be off just by a little bit, and then the bees fly away. So I'm pointing it at the entity here, and you should see an effect of them spiraling around briefly, and that's how you know it's working. But as I was saying, the BB gun uses up honey, and it's pretty efficient with that honey, so you only need to fill it once in a while, and you can kind of just spam the repair bee on whatever it is. So say you're mining, and you want to repair your pickaxe, you can do that with the BB gun, and it should work. Look at that! Our chisel is fully repaired. Awesome! Let's talk about the all-important honey smelter bee. Why is it important? Because it's how you get the BB gun and the bee armor, which it's awesome, the awesome bee armor. So the way it works is similar to the smelter bee or the ore crusher bee, in that you put it in a nearby apiary and it works on items in a flower pedestal. And I've set up this little mini automation here to demonstrate how this works. So you put iron ingots in a hopper which feed into the flower pedestal, and then when they're fully smelted they go down here and they'll end up wherever you want them to go. So let's do that. I've chosen 28 iron ingots here, and why 28? It's because that's precisely how much you need to make a full suit of armor plus the BB gun. And as the honey smelter queen does her work here, we should get a honeycomb ingot, and we'll get 28 at the end of it. And if I hit U here, we'll see how it's used. You can see it makes the armor, you know, real simple recipes, the standard recipes that you're used to, and it also makes the BB gun. So let's go ahead and make one. Let's grab one of those rather than make it. You'll notice that it's got a little bar that indicates how full it is, and what that is that's honey. That's your honey bar. So how do we fill it with honey? What you can do is you can use the bottler from forestry. You can put it in there. So you basically use centrifuge honey drops. That turns into honey, which you pipe into the bottler, and then you can put the BB gun in there and fill it up. But I prefer to use the fluid transposer from thermal expansion, because I can just use a honey bucket. And by the way, you have to use a forestry honey bucket, not, you know, there's other honey buckets out there, like Rustic has a honey bucket. That's not going to work. So you fill up your fluid transposer, and then you put your BB gun in here, make sure it's in fill mode, and you've got yourself the BB gun. And the BB gun interface, I'm sure you've seen me do it early in the video, is you just shift right click to bring up the BB gun interface. And if you want to switch which bee, you just shift scroll with your scroll wheel on your mouse. And that's how you can switch which bee is in use. And here's a little tip for you. I've set up a little automation here for basically doubling the effective armor of your bee armor after you make it. So just put your armor queen in a nearby apiary, preferably give it some frames, and then just feed one hopper into the next, and then ultimately out into a chest. And what you can do is this. You just put your armor on these flower pedestals and be patient. And when they are fully honeyed up, they will pipe out into this chest and you can pick up your fully doubled armor. Alright, it's time to take a break. I didn't intend to make this a two-parter, but I mean, geez, look at this wall of bees. It's enormous! And that doesn't even include all the items that Career Bees adds. Also, while I was recording this, RDW Tima came out with a new version of Career Bees that adds a new bee and new functionality to an existing bee. Now, I tried out that functionality and it does appear to be a bit buggy. As you can see, these features are still landing. So until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe, and be awesome. Mad Scientist Queen. What does that do? Try. Doing something. Ah! Whoa.